Hello, everyone, and welcome to P&P Live. My name is Beth Wong, and I work in events for Politics and Prose. Thank you so much for joining us in this new format where we continue to bring the authors you love and their new books to the Politics and Prose community. At any time during the event tonight, you can click on the green button below to purchase tonight's book on P&P's website. We're currently offering free media mail shipping as an incentive, especially as our physical stores are closed, and we need your online purchases in order to keep bringing you the programming P&P is known for. Tonight, you can ask the author a question by clicking on Ask a Question, which can be found near the bottom of your screen as well. You can read people's questions and even vote for the ones you'd like to hear the most in that box as well. A reminder that unlike our in-person events, the author, host, and audience members cannot see you through the screen, so we welcome you tonight, even in your pajamas. On to the event. After more than a decade and a half, Julia Alvarez, author of beloved and best-selling novels for adults and children, including How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accents and In the Time of the Butterflies, brings us Afterlife, a novel about loss, family, and compassionately navigating a world in crisis. Julia is joined tonight in conversation by Jaquira Díaz, essayist, poet, and author, most recently of her memoir, Ordinary Girls. Welcome, Julia and Jaquira.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. I'm so excited to speak with you, Julia. I definitely wanted to.
Yep, sure.
Sorry, I'm so excited. I can't contain my excitement right now. I am not in my pajamas. I put on a dress for the first time in like 24 days for this event. So thank you for having me. I'm very excited, and so is everyone else. We have lots and lots of questions already. But I'd like possibly if you could open with Afterlife, with the prologue, just the opening, just a short reading, as much as you'd like to give us, so that we have a sense of how the book opens.
Great. First of all, gracias. Thank you, Jaquira, for stepping in and hosting this event at the last minute. We had to learn all this technology. One of us is still on the learning curve here. Thank you also, Politics and Prose, for hosting Afterlife on the eve of its birth. Tomorrow is the official pub date. And I can't see anybody out there. So if you're wearing your pajamas or whatever you're doing, hi to everybody, readers and friends and former students maybe, and familia who are joining us tonight. So it's wonderful to be together apart, which is what reading is all about, right? So the prologue that Jaquira asked me to read is it's called Broken English, and Antonia is the main character, but when you start the book, you don't know that either. So Broken English. She is to meet him, a place they often choose for special occasions, to celebrate her retirement from the college, a favorite restaurant, and the new life awaiting her. A half-hour drive from their home, a mountain town, 20 if she speeds in the 30-mile zone. Tonight it makes more sense, a midway point, to arrive separately, as she will be driving down from her doctor's appointment. She gets there first, as he will be driving from home. He should have been there before her. She starts calling his cell. After waiting 10, 20 minutes, he doesn't answer. Irritation turns to worry. No surprise there. Always leaves it behind in his work jeans pocket. The hospital, 911, the police. Have you seen him? Or turns off the sound at the movies and then forgets to turn it back on. Can you please help me find him? Even now, months later, about 6 feet, thinning hair, a boy's blue eyes. When she knows good and well, dusk, deepening, how he had been driving up the mountain. He feels a stab of pain, already thinking of what he might order, coming from his left side, but radiating out, wondering about her state of mind, the special, if it is special, if she would be excited or terrified, or his default favorite, salmon with lemon dill sauce, like a sword piercing his left side, substituting mashed potatoes for the fries. They're very good about substitutions. Though how would he know what it feels like to have a sword piercing his left side? because of his medical training, understanding what is happening, not wanting to cause more harm, pronounced dead on arrival. He forgets to charge it and it runs out of juice. Even now, 3 months shy of a year later, pulling his car off the road, rolling gently to a stop, when she knows exactly what happened, a ditch that might as well be his grave, discovered by a passing cyclist, rushed to the ER, why he was late, a ruptured aortic aneurysm, as he is to be cremated and therefore have no grave per se. Neither he nor she could have foreseen, even now, a boy's blue eyes, and cannot comprehend how someone she loved, she keeps running and rerunning that night in her head. Can you please help me find him? Can be nothing but dust, unread emails, fragments, unpaid bills, memories, broken glass, dented bumper, a new life awaiting her, both terrified and excited. How can it be? Can you help me find him? Tall with thinning hair, a new life awaiting her. Can you help me find him? A mystery she cannot by any means solve. Nevertheless, she keeps asking, where are you? As this is the only way she knows, can you help me find him? How to create an afterlife for him.
Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
so this is how Afterlife begins. We open with this prologue, Broken English, which is very different in style and tone from the rest of the book. It feels urgent, immediate. There's a sense of disruption and chaos from the very beginning, but also beauty and poetry as readers gain access to Antonia's state of mind and her grief before we're even introduced to her. Can you talk about your decision to write the prologue in this style, to open the book this way?
Well, I would love to make myself sound smarter than I was. I like, as with all writing, you try things, it's not quite working, it doesn't feel right, you try something else, you cut and paste. And I think I wanted, when I eventually came up with this would be the entry into the story, that I wanted the prose, the syntax, the sporadic pieces all to sort of embody, to be a reflection of Antonia's life coming apart. Everything in fragments, everything in little pieces, little details, and all of it just falling apart. And I wanted in that prologue, Broken English, for the prose to reflect that. And still for the reader not to be totally lost. That was a tricky balance, so that they could get enough of the information and sort of in a fragmented way still know what has happened. A terrible accident, a failed dinner that they were going to have together, etc. Yeah.
It definitely reads like the moment when you're experiencing grief, but also reliving that moment again and again. It's interesting to me how different that section is from the rest of the book, because we still get so many parts of Antonia throughout the novel, except that she's more put together and contained and trying to navigate this life. It's like the prologue kind of explodes for her, and then she comes back and is trying to find her way.
Right.
In the first chapter, we're introduced to Antonia, a retired professor who's just lost her husband and is learning to live again, trying to reconcile who she is. She's two different people: the professor, the woman she was before her husband's death, and the widow, the woman she is now, trying to find a way in this afterlife. Can you talk about writing Antonia and the process of creating her character?
Gosh, that's such a, it's a question that sort of highlights the fact that how characters are formed out of a combination of little details, bits of yourself, of people you've known, of the the stage of life she's going through, and things that enter mysteriously when you're writing and you don't know where it came from. But I think with Antonia, I wanted a character that was smarter than me. I wanted a character that, in a sense, was I was going to be on a learning curve with her, learning things, because I think one of the things that I would get disappointed with what I was working on before is that I knew more than my characters. So I felt somehow like I was managing them. I wanted her to keep surprising me. And one of the things I really wanted in her character was real accuracy, not to fall into the cliches of her ethnicity or age group or what she's supposed to be or what people want her to be, or all the things that come to play. I wanted, because we're so much in her point of view, I wanted the readers to really get a sense of who she really is, that inner self that we don't share with many people, but that we love in the character we read, because it feels like, oh yes, hi, yes, 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 you got it there. And I wanted that sense as I wrote Antonia, and I needed that in a character. I didn't ever want her to flatten out. And so that meant that there was always complication and growing and her trying to piece together throughout the whole book. I don't think she comes together so much as she's trying to put the pieces together. And I think she comes to a resolution about that in the end. But she's, trying, and who is she? When everything that has defined her has fallen apart.
Yeah, I get a sense from reading that so much of what she's doing is fighting what other people expect her to do, and like she's not really, she I think she has a self-awareness of what people expect from her, and what they expect from her because of who she is. She's not perfect. She spends a lot of the book trying to find her way back to the woman she's meant to be, or even trying to discover the woman she's meant to be. Yeah. She takes on everyone else's problems as her own, reluctantly. It's definitely not that she's trying to save anyone. She's reluctantly taking on these roles. And she understands that everyone in her life has expectations of her because she's a sister. Her sisters expect her to be a certain way, to abide by the rules of the sisterhood. Also, I love that use of the sisterhood. And because she's Latina, her neighbors and his employees expect her to behave a certain way. Everyone has expectations because of her intersecting identities. She's a woman, a Latina, a sister, a widow, an immigrant, a professor. And she's finding herself trying to navigate all these identities. Can you talk a bit about what you were trying to say about women, about being an immigrant woman or a Latina, and our culture's expectations of us?
Well, you got it. There, I think any culture probably has expectations, and sometimes they fall heavily upon the shoulders of the females of the tribe, to sort of embody them, to teach them to the young, and etc. And I think one of the things that I wanted with this character, that she's Latina, but that's not, that's not like there isn't one kind of Latina to be.
Right.
There isn't one kind of writer to be, that there is complication, and she's constantly running up against people putting her in a little box of who she is because she is female, or because she is Latina, or because she is, educated and a professor. And, she's constantly wanting, again, and that's an interesting thing. I think she's wanting to break those cohering things. They don't feel comfortable anymore. They feel like they lock her in. And I think, part of the thing that Antonia comes to is that we talk about the diversity in our culture, but the internal diversity too, to be all the selves that are in us in whatever combinations they are, and to grant each other and ourselves, because that's a lot, you're right, with Antonia, to allow ourselves to be that diversity, and be accurate about who we are. And, you know, I think there's a lot of pressure. I felt it as a Latina woman to always be taking care of the we.
Mm.
And then you come to the culture where, you know, apparently the first world culture, as Antonia says, seems to her to say, you know, self-care is the most important. First, your oxygen mask first. So she's hearing these two things and trying to figure out in any given moment, what is the combination that is true to who she is. And you're right, activism, she feels very drawn and compassionate in some ways, but she's a reluctant activist. You know, unlike her husband, the Anglo white man, who's supposed to be the one that's pushing back against activism, he's the one that really wants to get involved, and everyone assumes it's her because she's the Latina. So of course she's reluctant. You know, she's reluctant to just be defined by the, finally at this stage of her life, she's an elder, you know, older person, to be defined by the expectations coming at her.
I did find that there was so many people expecting her to be a caretaker, but no one was really taking care of her except for her sisters, who were also expected to be caretakers. And it's like they spend their life taking care of each other. But if she didn't have those sisters, who would be taking care of her? I don't want to respond to that question. Yeah. I don't have a clan of sisters to take care of me, so.
Yeah. Well, let's say take care, to use one of the characters, Izzy, who loves her air quotes. Take care. You know, there is the sisterhood is powerful. It's strong. It's like a Greek chorus. Sometimes it's full of opinions. She loves these women. These women are, as she says, she feels like part of, they only are a whole when they all come together, but not without the divisions and the bifurcations and the struggles that they go through. So, you know, it's interesting. It's an interesting, again, it's not as easy as saying the sisters, they take care of each other. I mean, they're trying to. And I guess that's the thing, that the sisterhood finally is, allows them all to survive, is that they're going to mess up royally, but they're committed to accompanying each other. And to me, that's what the sisterhood is. It's not that, you know, that we make a beloved community and the sisters are all wonderful, biological, or our buddies, you know, our girls that we hang out with and that are so vital to us. But we're committed. We're you know, we're finally going to be there. Sometimes we will be there with a big mouth and with a lot of advice, opinions, but we're gonna show up when needed.
There's so much, something that I was thinking about in reading this book. There's so much in Afterlife about power and who gains access to everything in our society, from healthcare to safe passage, who is trusted, who is believed, based on how much power they have. Sometimes, as in Antonia's case, her class and her job as a professor and her husband's job as a doctor help them to access some of these things. But there are other ways that Antonia's family has been fortunate. Antonia and her sisters haven't had to endure the humiliation and subjugation that Estela has, Estela being another character in the book, who is 17, undocumented, and pregnant, for example. Antonia's character knows this and tries to use her position to help Estela and other migrant workers in her community. Can you talk a little bit about how you imagined Antonia and her sisters being Dominican and American?
Well, it's an interesting question about the power dynamics, and that very much comes to play in the novel. And again, Antonia talks about how she doesn't want that power, that talks about how she couldn't stand when she got her driver's license because suddenly she had, 2,000 pounds that she could hurt someone with, I mean, that's just parsing it down to a very little detail, but she's uncomfortable with the power, but she's got to face it. She's got the power. And so if you have the power, what do you do with it? And that's the thing she's trying to figure out. How does she use the power, and how could she not use it? That's also a big issue. Because if you have the power and you say, well, this is not my problem, then there's a certain responsibility and ethical and moral that comes with being the one that is given the power. How do you use it, and what do you do with it? And when I say all these things, I want to say also that I think what I love about novels is something that Chekhov once said, that the task of the novelist or the writer is not to solve the problem, but to state it correctly. And that's what I mean also by accuracy. I don't have a solution about what is the right thing to do. And Antonia constantly is asking herself, what is the right thing to do? Who is the person that you should do this for? What is the right time? The questions that Tolstoy asks in that story called The Three Questions. And she doesn't have an answer. But I think the most that we can ask if we want to live, a decent life, an ethical life, is to keep the questions alive in us as we move through situations, and to realize that, yes, there is a certain amount of responsibility that comes with power, whether you want that power or not, or whether you ask for it or whatever. If you got it, then, as Toni Morrison said, the function of freedom is to free someone else. You don't just say, well, here's my freedom, I'm going to go into my little gated community of safeties. You can't, yeah.
You bring me to a good point, because I was going to ask why Antonia gets involved. Antonia and her sisters, we get a sense, haven't had to deal with the same kind of poverty and humiliation that Estela or Mario or the other immigrant workers in Antonia's community have had to endure. And I was going to ask, can you talk about why Antonia gets involved when she has a choice? But you kind of answered my question. That we do have a responsibility when we have the privilege and power to use it, because we do make a choice, either use it or don't, and not using it and not lifting someone else is really a choice that we've made, right? I wanted to talk a little bit more about the Vega sisters, because as you know, my book Ordinary Girls is about girlhood, and while I don't have this huge group of sisters, I do have who I call my girls growing up, who are still my best friends. And Afterlife deals with their relationship, their different personalities, their strengths, their flaws, their fights, and their enduring sense of loyalty, which is very, very strong. When one of Antonia's sisters, Izzy, goes missing, the sisters immediately act, going to the police, private detectives, they drive across the country, they do almost the impossible to find their sister. She's suffering from mental illness, we learn, and the sisters will get help if they can find her. Mental illness is one of the novel's subtle themes, and it runs the course of the book, even though it doesn't really take over the novel and it doesn't overwhelm the reader. There's always a sense that even though the world is broken and even though things are falling apart around us, love and family and community will help get us through it, even if they don't solve the problems. Can you talk a little about what that means in the world of Afterlife?
Well, I think that, that we talked a little bit earlier about sisters, and I very much thought about your memoir, Jaquira, because I feel like when I read it, for me, that is a sisterhood, this group of women, your girls that are there, making mistakes, messing up, picking you up when you mess up, and that there was a really strong sense of the power of women together. And I very much, feel that's a very big part of the book, that what sisterhood is all about. In terms of the power thing that you mentioned before, I think part of the thing is that Antonia realizes that she has a responsibility. She's going through, her life is just falling apart, and she feels like, cut me some slack. But you can't cut slack when someone else is, being, in dire need. You have to somehow, you have to find a way to put on your oxygen mask and share it with someone else. But I think one of the things that surprises Antonia, because she's never had a child, and she's learned that the proper way to refer to that is that you don't call yourself childless, because you say you're a non-parent. But anyhow, what surprises her is that it's not just obligation and moral obligation. She actually starts to fall in love with Estella. She feels this maternal pull. She just wants to suddenly, be connected, and to make sure this young life makes it through, which is surprising to Antonia, who's never experienced it before. So I think that also was a part of it. But in the world of Afterlife, in terms of that title, Afterlife, people thought, so you don't think that it's like a religious track of any kind, or a plug for the afterlife. What I really meant by that was that, a life is full of many little deaths, and if we're lucky, and if we have our sisterhood, wherever you find it, and our brotherhood, and that somehow there is a life after each of those lives is over. We will come back, and love will see us through, and community. And this is why the thing we talked about before, even if the sisters could kill each other, Issy is missing, and they're so overwrought and so wanting to find her, but they say the minute they find her, they're going to kill her for giving them all this work. So, there's that too. But I think relationship is about people that also go through those little deaths and come back into your afterlives, and they're threaded through, and that's a way to string the pieces together. Those kinds of bonds of friendship and motherhood and womanhood helps Antonia to put the little pieces together again. And I think with your memoir too, Jaquira, it's funny because I was taught, they're very different characters, very different types of family, very different immigrant situations. But I felt like in the memoir, the character that's you, that I know is also, a creation that happens when you write a character down, even if it's you, that she's trying to put all these little pieces together, of her life and of the people in her life. And that last chapter, not the epilogue, but the last chapter called Returning, there's like all these pieces from different parts of her life that she's putting together, at the same time also trying to put together the history of Puerto Rico, or Puerto Rico, to say it the way I would really say it, and piecing it together. And I thought, it's really interesting, because I saw that in very different ways, my novel and your memoir were, in a way, doing that quilting that is supposed to be, a women's art, piecing the little pieces together. Because when we've gotten fragments, which is so much of women's history, is the fragments that didn't get in the books many times. Our job as storytellers is, and as artists, but storytellers, of putting the little pieces together and creating our own stories.
It's certainly how I thought about the writing of that last chapter, which it felt like I was trying to piece something together, like returning not just to Puerto Rico as a place, but returning to my memories, returning to history, returning to the many homes we had, returning to people, and their individual, like what they individually meant to me in my life, and kind of trying to say something that went back to the whole book, not just that chapter, but that was recalling the whole book.
Yeah, it was beautiful, beautiful.
Thank
And you know, it's funny because my first book of poems was called Homecoming, which is another way of saying returning. You know,
Yeah.
and for those of us who are immigrants or have other origins, and who isn't anymore, you know, you leave your hometown, even if you're from the United States of America, and we're constantly trying to figure out what is home now. And home is all the layers of what home has been. You know, it's our root system that we need, but we're constantly trying to find the places that we belong. And I don't know about you, Jaquira, but for me, I found that the root system, the real home, became the world of the imagination. That it could be big enough and portable enough that it could contain all those layers of what it meant, you know, of what home has meant over time to me personally, but also historically to my people, to where I came from. Yeah, all those layers and all those displacements, which started happening the minute that, you know, that America was discovered.
Yeah.
It wasn't already there, you know, all these replantings and yes.
I want to take us to some of the audience questions. There are already some questions here. And the top question is from Sara Gonzalez, who's a fan. What contributed to you writing about the immigrant experience? This book took such a long time to write, and it's incredibly relevant to our Latinx stories. So excited to read it. Felicidades.
I thank you. Thank you so much. What took me so long to write it? Yeah, ouch, right? When my publisher put out, you know, kind of the notice and said it's her first novel, adult novel in 14 years or almost 15 years, I thought, yikes, really? And I have to tell you, I have been writing all along, but I wasn't satisfied with what I was coming up with. And I did write some books for young readers and essays and poems, but in terms of a novel, it took this long to integrate all the different things that I wanted to put my arms around in this story. And in a sense, you know, I've always been a writer, that writing is my way of life, not just something I do and, you know, leave and get a certain number of pages done. It so much is connected to my life. I call it, you know, my practice, I guess it's my calling, I call it too, that I needed to learn and integrate in my own life and person the things that would be reflected in this novel. I say it's my first novel written as an elder. And I don't mean that, you know, it's some pokey viejita novel, you know, and it's just you're gonna say the Latina version of, okay, boomer. I think it's, you know, I think it's a novel that is about, at this stage of life, I was asking myself, what are the stories that I can tell with the hindsight I have, with the insights that I've gained, and what are the stories before I go that are left in me to tell? And that takes a while to accurately understand. And so I was writing my way to learning those things. And as I said, you know, Antonia is a character that that I often felt knew more than I did. And I was I'm a slow learner. She's maybe a little faster. So I was trying to learn those things. And I think that's what, in a way, took so long.
But I think that produces the best kind of writing. For me, in my opinion, the best kind of writing is produced like writing as discovering, when you're discovering things that excite you as you're writing. If I knew everything I was gonna write before I sat down to write it, what's even the point, right? And getting to meet characters, and I think readers can tell when a character excites you, she will excite them.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, I'm in Frost country here, but he had a line that I love. He would say, "No surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader." In other words, you have to be constantly, you're energized by the things that you're learning too. You know, you write not just because you know things, you write to find things out. And
Yeah.
so that's gasoline that runs the writer's tank for me. You know, not to use the fossil fuel analogy, but it is true. Yeah.
We have a reader named Marlo who wants to know, Julia, are there little bits of your life in this book? Nice to see you.
I wish I could see them. Don't you, Jaquira? We don't know who they are, but Marlo, of course, you know, when you write, I mean, all of your life, the people you've known, and some of them are not very happy about it, the people you've known, the experiences you've had, the things you've read, the movies you've seen, everything comes to bear. That's why I think I used to tell my students, everything is research for a writer. You know, Henry James said his advice to the young writer was, be him, and I add, or her, on whom nothing is lost. So I'm not really very interested in Julia Alvarez and getting myself in there like, hey, you know, it's all about me. But I'll go through everything she has for what I need, and stuff that she wants to offer because she feels it's so smart and she's polished it and she gives it to me. If it doesn't work, sorry, Julia, it doesn't go in the book. You know, sorry, it's going to hurt your ego. You thought that was the smartest sentence in the world. You laughed out loud, but you know what? It doesn't really work, or it doesn't work in this book. So you're constantly mining your experience. And you know, I think it was Julia Glass. We were on a panel together, and she said a really smart thing. She said, because she said, you know, she writes fiction, but she says even fiction that doesn't seem to be about the writer, all fiction is emotionally autobiographical. So I think the things and the characters that you write about are characters that you are energized by, curious about, obsessed with, and that has everything to do with the things in you. You're, as Jaquira, you said, that you're trying to find out, that you're trying to understand. So I think that there's a lot of Julia in Antonia, and there's a lot in Antonia that doesn't have my DNA. It has many fathers and mothers.
We have a comment from Indira. I love her butterfly accessory. I grow and monitor monarch butterflies with my special ed students.
Wow. Well, this is actually was given to me by one of my sisters, and it is a butterfly whistle. And when I first moved to DC from Vermont, I lived there for a year. I didn't know how to negotiate the big city of DC. And so my sister Maudie sent me this butterfly. It actually looks like a harmless pin, but it's actually a whistle that you can blow in. And so I could wear it as, you know, an accessory that I could, when I walk the streets at night, getting back from my workshop late at night, I had a whistle. And if that failed, it also has, now I'm going to ruin my outfit. It also has a big, huge pin. So I could blow and stab at the same time. Not at the same time. So now you know, this is.
Thanks for that comment, Indira. I have a question from Susan Hager. Do you ever get writer's block, and what do you do to shake it?
Hi, Susan. I know a Susan Hager, but I can't see if it's the same one. Writer's block, you know, I think writer's block is when the writer is getting in the way of the writing. William Stafford, a wonderful poet, said his advice to his students was, if you get writer's block, just lower your standards. A lot of it is the pressure you're putting, that it has to be perfect right at the start, and writing is all about rewriting and messiness and trying this out and this doesn't work, and you get frustrated, but you have a passion for getting it right, so you keep returning to it. But I think that's it, that you get in your own way because you want it to be perfect, because you put so much pressure on yourself. And in a way, you have to get yourself out of the way. And one of the ways to do that is just, what he meant was, don't write. It doesn't mean any shoddy thing you write is okay, but lower the standards. And another thing that I always find is that you've got to return to writing as a form of playfulness. There's got to be that playfulness, and play comes when you've relaxed and you're enjoying and trying it out, and you're not monitoring and controlling and supervising it. So I think that's the thing. And I always say, when I had a student or a friend that was going through a writer's block, I would say, write me a letter. Write in a journal. Don't say, oh, this is the start of the great American novel, which I will write. Oh my gosh, you'll terrify yourself. Or this is going to be the beginning of, I think all those expectations, to loosen them, and whatever strategies can help you do that. Sometimes it's as silly as, the kind of pen you write with. The place where you can build a kind of little quiet nest for yourself can help.
I've certainly dealt with that. And one of the things that helps me is changing either the way I'm writing or who I'm writing for. So writing a letter is something that always works for me. Just writing a letter, starting with no pressure, just thinking of one person, and then start writing that letter, and eventually try to tell them the story, try to tell them, that person, what it is I'm trying to say. And eventually I get a couple words out. And even if it's just a couple sentences that are the beginning of something else, that helps me. Or changing the medium, like try to write this story as an essay and try to write it as if you're telling someone or talking, or actually talk and record it into my phone. That sometimes helps.
Right.
Like changing the focus, changing something about exactly that pressure that you're putting on yourself.
And that's a great suggestion too, Jaquira, which I know I've taken, because people say, why don't you just stick to fiction? What's all this genre crossing? Well, first of all, as an immigrant, we always want to transgress borders, fiction, poetry. No, we want to cross over. We want to interweave. But I think a lot of it is, because sometimes it's not quite working as a story. So you do a poem from a character's point of view, or you write lyrics for a song they might sing, or something like that, and it brings you into the thing you're trying to work through another door, and opens another window. And I think that can really, really be helpful in terms of writing. When you're experiencing that block.
I'm so sorry we ran out of time to ask any more questions, but I really do appreciate everyone who asked questions. A lot of people just wanted to say thank you for writing this book. You're an icon in the literary community, particularly to Latinx readers. And thanking you for your time. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it.
Oh, gracias, everybody. And to Jaquira, I tried to set up a little thing here. We're sister books. Hey, here we are. Except it's probably inverted. I don't know how to. Yep, here they are. It's not inverted. Oh yes. It's a wonderful book. I'll tell you, one of the things about being an older Latina now is how wonderful to see these little, I think of them as the seeds we sowed way back, Sandra Cisneros, Ana Castillo, those of us that were pushing against that barrier to to our literature, our culture, our stories, and to see this wonderful, vibrant group of young Latina writers, especially. And this is a terrific memoir, really wonderful. So I'm glad that we're related. And Politics and Prose, you guys are awesome, keeping us together apart during these hard times, but we will make it through. There will be an afterlife after this life is over.
We'll keep writing.
Yes.
100%. On that note of the together apart, as we are all isolating and distancing, are there any books in particular that you two are turning to, or that you generally find inspiration or solace, or, you know, give into that pandemic mindset with? What are you guys reading right now?
Well, I'm reading a bunch of books. I just finished and highly recommend books by Natalia Silvester, books by Melissa Rivero, Angie Cruz, Carolina Robertis. I will tweet all of these so that you all get them. I'm trying to build, I think we're all trying to build a Latinx literature library. I just also picked up Kylie Reid's Such a Fun Age, just started it, and it opens in a very emotional way. It opens with a Black woman who is the caretaker for a white child and is stopped in a grocery store and kind of arrested because she's not arrested, but they approach her and they accuse her of kidnapping the child, even though she is actually taking care of him. The writer is very, very talented. So this is
such a fun age.
It's a serious book that's also very funny.
I like those.
Yeah.
Yep. Great.
Julia, what are you reading right now?
Well, today I re-immersed myself. I had already read it. I loved it. I realized that my blurb is on the front cover, and I still agree with it. There is more life packed on each page of Ordinary Girls than some lives whole in a lifetime. So that has been a pleasure to revisit.
Thank you.
I picked up Ted Chiang's Exhalation. I am not a sci-fi reader, but I picked it up, and the first story is so much like one of my favorite stories growing up, The Arabian Nights, that I just was pulled in. He is an amazing storyteller. So it's not my usual, but I love getting out of the gated community of my own tastes. Angie Cruz, Dominicana, is a wonderful book. A young Dominican writer, Elizabeth Acevedo. Oh my gosh, she's powerful. She is really amazing. I love especially The Poet X and the new one, With the Fire on High. Excellent books. I also have Antonia, sorry, not Antonia, my God, my own characters in my Carmen Maria Machado. I love the first collection of Her Body and Other Parties, and this one, In the Dream House, is really very smart, very good. I'm also, my next book, but I can't pronounce the title, is A Paragon, recommended by one of my agents, Susan Burkholz. She said, you got to read this. And when Susan says you got to read something, I usually pay attention. How much time do you have? But you guys, let me put in a plug. And it's all my own doing. Let me put in a plug. Order these books. Order these books. Independent bookstores have been taking care of our readers, of us readers, of our books. And now is a tough time for them. And this is a time to take care of them. So I know that many of us in the community here in Middlebury are, ordering from our little bookstore. It's shuttered, but the owner goes in and puts out orders, and we just think it's a vibrant and, kind of endangered institution unless we support it. So order these books from Politics and Prose or your local independent bookstore. Okay.
Thank you.
And there's a link right here that you can click on to purchase Afterlife.
Right.
Yes, everybody, green button. It shines every 5 seconds below. It's literally a shiny green button. Click on it because your patronage is what's allowing us to bring you this kind of really incredible programming that's like a bright light in these really dark times. We just can't continue them without the book sales to support them. So you have a ton of great recommendations for books to be reading right now, books to turn to right now, and we hope you purchase them from Politics and Prose. But thank you so much to Julia and Jaquira. This was incredible, and I feel so honored to have any kind of tangential part in it. Thank you.
You were vital. What do you mean? You were trying to get us on the line.
We wouldn't be here without you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Jaquira, you're my hero.
Thank you.
Thank you for stepping in. See you between the covers of your next book, if not before. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you all. Thank
What
you.
are you guys saying?
Besos, abrazos.
Goodbye.
Okay, bye.
Stay well and stay well read. Bye-bye.
Yes. Yep.